I just paid off my car loan. Early. 3 years early, actually. My coworker thought I was insane. He literally said, "Why would you do that? The interest rate is so low, you should invest that money instead." Here's what he doesn't understand. I didn't pay off that loan to save on interest. I paid it off to buy my freedom back. And that difference in thinking, that's exactly why some people build wealth and others just manage debt their entire lives. Debt isn't neutral. It's not just a financial tool, it's a relationship. And in Jewish financial thinking, that relationship matters more than the interest rate. Let me show you why this perspective has created generations of financial stability, while others drown in payments they can mathematically justify. Before we dive in, quick favor. Comment below with what city you're watching from. I'm curious to see where this message is landing and what different debt cultures exist around the world. Drop your city right now. Alright, let's talk about the Jewish perspective on debt, because it starts with something most financial advisors never mention. Debt is slavery. Not metaphorically, not poetically, practically. When you owe someone money, they own a piece of your future. Your decisions aren't fully yours anymore. You have obligations, you have masters, and freedom matters more than almost anything else in Jewish thinking. This is why the approach to debt is so radically different. It's not about optimizing interest rates or leveraging low-cost borrowing. It's about minimizing the time you're under obligation to anyone. Most people ask, what's the monthly payment? Jewish thinking asks, how fast can I be free of this? Let me give you a concrete example. My friend Aaron bought a car last year, had the cash to pay for it outright. The dealership offered him 0% financing for 5 years. Mathematically perfect deal, right? Free money. Any financial calculator would say, take the loan, invest the cash, come out ahead. Aaron paid cash, walked out owning the car completely. His financially savvy friends thought he was an idiot. But here's what happened. 6 months later, his company restructured. His department got cut. He was unemployed for 4 months. During that time, he had no car payment. That absence of obligation gave him flexibility. He could take a lower-paying job he actually wanted, instead of desperately grabbing whatever paid enough to cover his payments. That's the value of freedom. You can't calculate it on a spreadsheet. This brings us to the first principle. Avoid consumer debt entirely. Not minimize it. Not optimize it. Avoid it. If you can't pay cash, you don't buy it. Cars, furniture, electronics, vacations, clothes. If the money isn't in your account, the answer is no. Sounds extreme, right? Almost un-American. But here's the reality. Consumer debt doesn't build wealth. Ever. It doesn't matter how low the interest rate is. You're paying money for something that's decreasing in value. That's the opposite of wealth building. That's wealth destruction with a payment plan. I know a woman named Leah who lived by this rule religiously. Drove a 15-year-old sedan while her neighbors financed new SUVs. Furnished her apartment from thrift stores while her friends bought everything on credit. Wore clothes until they actually wore out. For 5 years, she looked like she was struggling. Then she bought a condo, with cash. Actual cash. No mortgage. At 28 years old, her friends were still making car payments, furniture payments, credit card payments. She owned her home free and clear. Who was actually struggling? The math isn't complicated. Consumer debt makes you feel rich while keeping you poor. Avoiding consumer debt makes you feel poor while building actual wealth. Now, let's talk about the one exception. Mortgages. Jewish financial teaching is generally debt-averse, but real estate debt is treated differently. Why? Because it's secured by an appreciating asset. You're borrowing money to acquire something that typically increases in value and can generate income. That's fundamentally different from borrowing to buy a couch. But even with mortgages, the approach is conservative. You don't borrow the maximum amount the bank will give you. You borrow the minimum amount necessary to acquire a property that makes financial sense, and you prioritize paying it off faster than required. My parents bought their house with a 30-year mortgage. Standard. But they treated it like a 15-year mortgage. Made extra payments every single month. Paid it off in 17 years. Their friends thought they were crazy. Why pay extra when you could invest that money? Here's why. When my dad's business hit a rough patch in year 18, they had no mortgage payment. Their largest expense was gone. That financial breathing room saved them. Most people maximize their mortgage because the interest is tax-deductible and the rates are relatively low. Jewish thinking says, the best interest rate is 0, and the best tax deduction is the one you don't need because you're not paying interest. Freedom beats optimization every single time. Here's another critical principle. Debt is emotionally expensive, not just financially expensive. This is what financial calculators miss entirely. They can tell you the interest cost. They can't measure the stress cost, the sleep you lose cost, the decisions you can't make cost, the opportunities you miss cost. When you're in debt, you think differently. You make career choices based on payment obligations instead of growth potential. You stay in jobs you hate because you need the income. You pass on entrepreneurial opportunities because you can't risk the steady paycheck. You're not free, and that lack of freedom has a cost that compounds over decades. My uncle Daniel was offered a partnership in a startup 20 years ago. Incredible opportunity. But he had a mortgage, 2 car payments, and credit card debt. He couldn't afford the pay cut required during the startup phase. He declined. That startup is now worth hundreds of millions. His debt obligations cost him generational wealth. Not because of interest rates, because of immobility. Let's address student loans because this is where the debt conversation gets really complicated. Education is valued enormously in Jewish culture, but educational debt is viewed with extreme caution. The question isn't, should I borrow for education? The question is, will this specific education create enough value to justify the debt and repay it quickly? This means avoiding prestigious expensive schools if state schools offer similar outcomes. It means choosing majors with clear income potential. It means working through school to minimize borrowing. It means graduating with the smallest possible debt load, not the maximum allowed. Rebecca, a young woman from my community, got accepted to an elite private university. Full tuition would have required $80,000 in loans. She chose a state school instead, graduated with $12,000 in debt, paid it off in 18 months. Her friend from the private school graduated with $90,000 in debt. 7 years later, she's still paying. They have similar jobs, similar incomes, wildly different financial freedom. Here's a concept that might sound harsh but is actually liberating. If you need to borrow money to afford something, you can't afford it. Period. The payment plan doesn't make it affordable. It makes it accessible. Those are different things. Affordability means you have the resources to acquire something without obligation. Accessibility means someone will let you have it now if you promise to pay later. Our culture has confused these concepts completely. People say, I can afford it, the payment is only $300 a month. No. You can access it, you cannot afford it. If you could afford it, you'd pay for it in full. This linguistic confusion leads to financial destruction. Jewish financial teaching is very clear on this distinction. Afford means, I have the money, and spending it won't jeopardize my financial stability. Access means, someone will lend me the money, and I think I can make the payments. One builds wealth. The other builds obligation. Let me share something personal. 5 years ago, I wanted to expand my business. Needed about $50,000 for equipment and inventory. I could have gotten a business loan easily. Instead, I waited, saved, grew slower. Took 18 months to accumulate the cash. Then I expanded. My competitor got the loan. Expanded immediately. Grew faster initially. Then hit a slow period. Couldn't make his loan payments. Lost everything. I'm still here, growing steadily. Completely debt-free. Speed isn't always wealth. Sometimes slowness is wealth. Sometimes patience is wealth. Sometimes the willingness to delay gratification is the actual competitive advantage. Here's the final principle that ties everything together. The goal isn't to manage debt well. The goal is to need no debt at all. Most financial advice is about debt optimization, lower interest rates, balance transfers, consolidation, refinancing. It's all focused on managing debt better. Jewish financial wisdom says, eliminate debt entirely. Don't manage it. End it. This requires a completely different lifestyle. You live below your means. You save before you spend. You delay purchases until you can afford them. You build emergency funds so unexpected expenses don't force you into borrowing. You prioritize financial freedom over looking successful. It's not easy. It's not fast. But it works. So here's what Jewish thinking about debt actually creates. People who own their cars, their homes, their lives. People who make decisions based on opportunity, not obligation. People who sleep well because they owe nothing. People who can take risks because they have no payments. People who build wealth slowly but surely because every dollar they earn is theirs to deploy, not promised to someone else. That's why it builds wealth, not because the math is better, because the freedom is real. Tell me in the comments what debt you're working on eliminating right now. Hit that like button because financial freedom starts with changing how you think about debt. Subscribe because the next video reveals the exact steps to become completely debt-free faster than you think possible. And you need that roadmap.